Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney, today joined with Chad Himes.
Hello.
We're going to talk about a secret to great leadership. Now, so often, especially in the world of social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, hashtags, and selfies, leaders, companies, and individuals struggle with harnessing one of the most powerful traits of great leadership, which is being humble. And I want you to know that I think about this all the time. One, because I'm not inherently a humble person. I have an ego like everybody else, if not twice as large. And in business, we have track records, and our track records have been good. And for many of us, it gives us validity in our life and in our business to talk about those successes and even some of those failures. I read a book not too long ago that somebody shared with me, and I wrote down a couple messages, not thinking I was going to use it for anything else, but I often do this, Chad. And one of them was, pride is the enemy of self-improvement.
Oh, I like that. Say it again.
Pride is the enemy of self-improvement. Because when you start getting prideful, you start thinking that you know everything. And when you think you know everything, you have nothing to learn, so you don't go out there and try to improve.
Sure.
And a lot of times, businesses hit ceilings because they experience a ceiling created with pride.
Yeah.
In that same book, Chad, it said, you must value self-improvement over self-promotion.
Ooh.
I asked somebody, one of my partners yesterday, I said, I just read one of your Facebook posts, and I want to ask you a question. Who was that written for? Who was the audience that you were intending? And what was the feeling you were hoping that they were going to have when they got done reading it? Because I have some mixed messages. I don't know who it was for. All it really sounds to me like is a version of humble bragging. What's humble bragging, Chad?
Well, it's an oxymoron, right? Let me just start right there. It's jumbo shrimp. It's military intelligence. It's humble brag. You're either humble or you're bragging, right? And the humble brag is the way of bragging, yet pretending you're not.
Right. They would say something like, I just really want to thank the XYZ organization for giving me the XYZ Person of the Year.
Right.
Right? It really says, hey, everybody, FYI, I am the Person of the Year.
That's right.
Right? That is humble bragging.
Yes.
Throughout my career, I've been through this journey, Chad, where I didn't know how to express myself in a way that created validity and that created, in my mind, respect. And because of that, I would lead with things like statistics. I've sold X amount of widgets. We've made X amount of money. We've done X amount of things. We have X amount of employees. And I realized that those things were impressive. Mm-hmm. And when you impress people, they usually sit back and say, that's impressive, but I could never do that. Why do they say they could never do that?
They think there's something special about you or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, Chad has a head start.
Right.
Chad has a good metabolism. Chad had rich parents. They make up all these different stories
that aren't even true most of the time.
Of course, to validate where they're at in life.
Yep.
And to devalidate what you've accomplished.
Yep.
And I would say that so often that's our fault because we spent our time trying to impress people. Now, what we really want to do is we want to transition into empowering people. Empowering people is where you almost dumb yourself down in such a way where you say, hey, if a dumbass like Ben can do it, anybody can do it. Trust me.
You know, Ben, you were reading some quotes you wrote from a book, and I've got one that from a book that I read, and people might not know what books you were referring to. It'll be really obvious what book I'm referring to, though. And I keep this on my phone to remind myself all the time. I have this opened, and the quote is, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and for those who humble themselves will be exalted. And if you're looking for it, it's in Matthew 23:12. I guess you can figure out what book that might be. Yet that's the one that reminds me all the time of exactly what you're just talking about, right? It's that making sure that we humble ourselves. And I mean, I look at you, you humble yourself all the time. You say you have challenges with it. You humble yourself all the time, and you have been exalted in the eyes of others because of what you have done. And if you were to run around bragging and exalting yourself, look at me, look at me, look at me, you would absolutely be humbled and nobody would be paying any attention.
Yeah, and there are lots of ways to do that. One, I would dress down in situations. I would drive a less than impressive car in situations, or not have certain things, or not have flashy things on my body. I don't want to impress them with what I have or what I've done. I want people to wake up and say, I can do that too. That's what really powerful leadership is.
Yes.
What we want is we want to embody the word humble in every aspect of our business and of our lives. What is a humble leader? A humble leader treats other people with respect, regardless of their role, title, position, wealth, net worth, results.
Yep.
Humble leaders recognize that their success is a combination of their wins and their losses.
Yes.
Most of the time, it's because of their losses. Now, I also see a trend going on right now where everybody talks about their failures like they should get a trophy for it, right? That isn't the gist of it either, right? The goal is to share things that empower people, not just things that say, "Oh, yeah, you really suck, you really screwed that up," or "Yeah, you're really, really impressive."
Right. I'm saying I failed at something so that you'll tell me how great I am and lift me back up, which really I knew I was great in the first place.
Now, what is this idea of creating a humble organization? What does that do for your company? It helps your people see potential in themselves. It helps people have energy and enthusiasm to go try something.
Humble people, and as you're saying it in an organization, there was a study that was done, and what they found, Ben, is that companies that had humble people in leadership roles, people that were being judged as humble more than prideful, they had a much more engaged workforce. They had a much lower employee turnover, and they had better customer retention because of it. So, I mean, right there in your organization, just being humble is going to make you not have to hire as often. Think of the stress you save yourself. Being humble is going to help you have more engaged people, which means you'll get better results from your people. You've got to remember to stay humble through the whole time. There are a few ways that people can stay humble. So you already gave one, Ben. You told us that, you don't show off. You don't overdress for a situation. You don't go above above that and try to put people down with, look at my Rolex or something like that. You're not taking that. Another one is you put people first. You always put other people first. And I think if I listen to you, you definitely say you or we a lot more than you'll ever say I.
It's painful to be in a conversation with somebody that's demanding something or wanting something or sharing something when the entire conversation is I, me, this is what I did, right? This is why you owe me. Those are painful, aren't they?
They can be, absolutely, when you're sitting there and people have that.
I was driving around with somebody the other day, and
who was driving around? What?
I was driving around the other day, and with somebody, and this gentleman said, "You say we a lot. Who's the we?" And I was talking about a business, and I said, "I'm actually the only part of that specific business." He said, "Well, why do you say we?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe it's like a French thing, we, but." I don't like talking about myself, and I don't like talking in the I thing that doesn't do anybody any good, right? So I automatically defer to we.
Yeah.
Every employee in our world, I will refer to as my partner in something.
Right.
It's just how I speak, right? So we could change our language to create a culture in our company that embodies that by removing I, me, right? By changing they, employee, manager, all that. right? I would rather have no titles, no org charts, right? No fancy business cards. In fact, if you look me up on LinkedIn, you'll laugh when you see my description. Those things don't help.
Correct.
What else?
And you're saying that because you do this a great job with this. Again, it's that humble people brag about others, which you do all the time, right? Oh, such and such did such a great job with this, even if you did it. You'll share that. All right, so here's another one, Ben, and it's another simple one if we're going to change our language. People take the time, humble people will take the time to say thank you. How hard is it to say thank you? And people will forget to say thank you all the time. We'll go out to lunch. A waitress will just bring the drinks. And we'll all say thank you at the table. Yet the other tables, we don't hear a thing coming from them. And we're not bragging here about it. We're just saying the example on it. Add those two words to your vocabulary and add thank you.
That's so good. I mean, you could tell that when somebody does not live in gratitude, the only other option for them is to believe that it's owed to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't treat the server or the cook or whoever that person is with respect. They think it's owed to them because they are better in some position or because they are paying.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one that, again, we've seen, Ben, and that's humble people have an abundance mentality. When they win, they don't necessarily mean someone else has to lose. There can be more than one opportunity in there to go around. You might win bigger, but that it's not a your win has to be someone else's loss.
Yeah. Humble people are not offended if they don't get credit. Right? They're not easily embarrassed.
You've talked about this a lot too. Going along with that abundance mentality is they'll assume responsibility. Right. And I think we had Dave Wiggs, who works in the organization, on an episode, and he said it, and you've said it in the past too, when you've been teaching some leadership lesson, that it should always be someone else's success and it should always be your failure.
Yeah. They take ownership, responsibility.
And Dave was talking about a time when he was completely in the wrong and you walked right into the room and said, I made a mistake, and it was the time you used I, and it was because you were taking full responsibility for yourself and not throwing anyone else under a bus. You're having that humility that comes with it, which brings you as a humble person.
I'm plenty willing for David to be wrong.
And he's probably been a few times.
And in situations, it's better for the company and the mission if I'm the wrong one.
Sure.
Because the employees, if they thought David was wrong, and in this situation he wasn't actually, but if they thought David was wrong, they might blame him or not do something or not move forward. If they thought I was wrong, I'm the owner of that particular company, right? They know that we're going to move forward no matter what. And in that situation, it was better for David to be the good parent and for me to be the bad dad.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm willing to take that.
Okay.
Now, one of my partners in crime who runs a bunch of our businesses, her name's Via Williams. And Via just started a great podcast.
Yep.
And we should throw a link or something in there for the ladies on the Empire Builders podcast, because I'm a big fan of them, the entire group. But Via does this thing where she is always, when talking to a group of people, she edifies me. Like she says, this is Ben's idea, or, this was Ben's, even when she was the one that did it. And it's such a humble example of leadership.
Yep.
And in the same way, I have to do the best that I can to promote her and her results and her success, because she is such a humble individual. She wouldn't tell other people about it. Right? So we have to lift each other up. And that's what a humble organization does. They don't just stand up there and brag about each other and make nonsense, but they lift each other up when appropriate, and especially publicly.
Yeah. Here's another one that humble people and humble organizations do, Ben. They ask for help. Talk about that a little bit. Talk about asking for help. I mean, you've got it all figured out. I mean, you've got a bunch of companies moving in the right direction. You got a bunch of people that are following what you've got to say. Yet, I don't know anybody more willing to ask for help than you when it's needed. So talk a little bit about asking for help and staying humble.
One phrase that I use on myself daily, Chad, is, what new value am I going to bring to my people today? And if you've worked with me as long as you have, and Bob has, and Dave has, and a lot of the people in our world, they've heard a lot of my stories, anecdotes, models, systems, acronyms, right? Beliefs, values. They've heard a lot of it, right?
Yep.
And at some point, that's going to get annoying. I know that I have to consistently bring new value, and I'm not a machine that creates value. I'm a machine that consumes it, reorganizes it, regurgitates it, or repositions it, right?
Yep.
So I would do that through the education of talking to other people, becoming mentored or coached, or listening to podcasts and reading.
So you're getting help you're not necessarily even always having to go to Bob or Dave or someone in the organization and saying, I need your help. You're looking to some of those authors that are out there and saying, I need your help. They don't even hear you ask because all you're doing is picking up their book. You're hearing a podcast from somebody and saying, I need your help. And then you'll share that podcast with those of us. You'll say, check this one out. Great message in here or great examples in here.
Yeah, maybe the difference between a medium learner and somebody that's truly committed to learning is that I'm also willing to pick up the phone or send an email and say, I just read your book. I have a few questions. Would you be willing to take 5 minutes? And I've had a variety of people say, unfortunately, I'm too busy, right? And we could list off those people.
Yep.
But I've had some surprisingly successful, powerful people say, absolutely, when works. And from there, I've been able to say, hey, will you coach or mentor me on this topic? Like Tom Wheelwright, who coaches me on my taxes.
Right. And this is exactly how I met Clint Swindoll, our friend Clint. I read his book, heard him speak somewhere, and sent him a message and said, would you? And of course, he's so humble. He immediately was, I'd be honored to take 10 minutes, I don't know who you are, and answer questions because clearly you've done the homework.
Humble leaders understand that being right isn't the most important thing.
Yes.
Right? They understand that even if they're technically right, logically they can prove it, that isn't the most important thing, right? Sometimes it's just more important that other people feel good or that other people work through it themselves, right? A unhumble leader is going to spend a lot of time showing people how smart they are and how right they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one that I have on my list here, Ben, that I wanted to go over when I was writing some notes on this, humble leaders and people listen. And boy, I don't think we go 3 episodes without you talking about pulling out the piece of paper, taking the notes, to making sure that you're actually listening. What value do you really see, and how do you find that keeps you humble by putting yourself in the position of a listener?
Well, think about when you're not listening. All you're doing is responding with your instant ideas or your stories where you one-up the person. That's funny you say that, Chad, because I had a similar situation last year, and here's what I did when really you hadn't even got that whole message out. There was a point to what you were saying, right? Humble people take the time to listen. Now, as we go through these lists, I want you to think about being humble is not a position, a trophy, an award, or a title. It's a journey. What are you doing every single day to show up humble? What are you doing every single day to create an organization that wants to be number one, that wants to win, who wants to make a lot of money, who wants to give back a ton, yet doesn't need the whole world to know it? That their results and their rewards speak for themselves. That will attract way more people to your life than being the person bragging, socialing, selfieing your way, impressing people instead of empowering them.
Yes, absolutely. You know, there's a quote here by Harold B. Lee, says, stay true in the dark and humble in the spotlight.
Ah, so good.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, take the time to write down, what can I do to be a more humble parent, partner, employee, leader, in all areas of your life. Take some time to write down, what could I do to make the word humble a value of our company that everybody lives by? In our company, one of our values, part of our health, our word is health, right? The last H is humble.
Yep.
And talk about it all the time. And then show up as humble. And ask people to call you out when you're not humble.
Yes.
Take the time to do the win, make, give exercise and ask yourself and your company and your organization and your peers and your leaders, what can we do to become an organization that's powered by the word humble?
You know, and on behalf of Ben and Bob and Dave and myself, we don't get the chance to probably say this to each and every one of you often enough. And that is thank you. Thank you for being a listener to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your ratings. Thank you for your reviews. Thank you for leaning in on our Facebook group. Thank you for being a part of the conversation that is Win, Make, Give. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we want to remind you, wash your hands, and as always, do good.